There is a photograph taken in Crescent City, California, just after midnight on the 28th of March, 1964. In it,
have more of a local impact. So this was really the first one that we've experienced that actually traveled across the Pacific Ocean.
a city block that was full of shops, cars, and apartment buildings 12 hours earlier, is simply gone. Not damaged, not flooded, gone. Where the building stood, there is open water, debris, and a darkness that looks like the ocean swallowed the street whole. The photograph ran in newspapers across the country, and then, almost immediately, the world moved on. Because that same night, something larger was happening. In Alaska, the most powerful earthquake in North American history.
And there was slip on the interface between the oceanic crust and the overlying continental crust.
Had just leveled entire towns. 130 people were dead. The news was coming in fast and brutal, and a small California fishing city getting hit by a late-night wave. That became a footnote. It has been a footnote ever since. But here is what the footnote doesn't tell you.
Right at this time that this idea of plate tectonics, that the surface of the Earth is broken up into roughly a dozen different plates and that they move around.
In the hours before that photograph was taken, Crescent City received a warning. A warning from a government agency designed specifically to prevent exactly what was about to happen. And residents, many of them, did the right thing. They evacuated, they got out, they waited, and then they came back, and the fourth wave killed 11 of them. Sound, a low resonant boom from beneath the sea floor, then silence. This is not a story about a natural disaster. It is a story about what happens when people believe the danger is over, and what the ocean does when we stop paying attention. Part 1. The town at the edge of the world, Crescent City, sits in the northwestern corner of California, right where the state nearly runs out of coastline before Oregon begins. It is a small town, fewer than 10,000 people even today, built around a natural harbor that has made it a center of commercial fishing and shipping for over 100 years. What makes Crescent City special is also what makes it dangerous. The bay is shaped like a bowl, narrowing as it approaches the shore. The sea floor in front of the town rises steeply from the deep ocean. These two features, the concave shape of the bay and the rapidly shallowing bottom, act like a lens, focusing incoming ocean energy and compressing it as it approaches land. What arrives as a modest swell in the open Pacific arrives in Crescent City as something else entirely. The town had been hit by tsunamis before. In 1946, a wave generated by an earthquake near the Aleutian Islands
Earthquakes have rattled Alaska's Aleutian Island,
killed one person in the harbor and caused significant flooding. In 1952, waves from a Kamchatka earthquake rattled the coast. In 1960, after a massive Chilean earthquake sent waves across the entire Pacific, Crescent City flooded again. 3 tsunamis in 18 years. And still, the town rebuilt on the same waterfront. Still, the same low-lying blocks of shops and apartments sat feet above sea level, separated from the open Pacific by nothing but a modest seawall and a few hundred yards of bay. This is not a criticism. It is simply what coastal communities do. They return to the water. The water is their livelihood. The water is their identity. But in March of 1964, the water they had learned to live beside was about to be set in motion by a force none of them could imagine, originating 1,500 miles away in the darkness beneath Prince William Sound, Alaska. Part 2. The system that was supposed to save them, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, was born from tragedy. In April of 1946, a massive earthquake near Unimak Island in the Aleutians generated a tsunami that crossed the Pacific without warning. In Hilo, Hawaii, the waves killed 159 people who had no idea anything was coming. The disaster made it brutally clear that the Pacific needed a coordinated system, a network of seismographs and tide gauges that could detect tsunamis in open ocean and get word to coastal communities before the water arrived. By 1964, that system existed, and on the evening of March 27th, it worked almost exactly as designed.
Second largest earthquake recorded in the world and surpasses the great 1906 San Francisco earthquake.
The magnitude 9.2 Alaska earthquake triggered seismographs across the Pacific within minutes. The warning center in Honolulu began issuing bulletins by 8 p.m. Hawaii time. Coastal communities from British Columbia to Baja California received official warnings. Civil defense sirens activated in many locations. Local radio stations broadcast evacuation orders. In Crescent City, the sirens went off just after 11 p.m. Police drove through neighborhoods with loudspeakers. Residents were told to move to high ground immediately. The estimated arrival time for the first wave was around midnight. Most people left. Thousands of residents climbed to the hills above the waterfront and waited. The system worked. The warning reached the people, and that makes what came next even harder to understand. Because at approximately 12:20 a.m., the first wave hit Crescent City, and it was small, barely 2 feet at the tide gauge. The bay sloshed, the water rose slightly, and then receded. To people watching from a distance, and to some who hadn't evacuated, it seemed almost anticlimactic. The second wave, arriving around 20 minutes later, was bigger, 6 feet, still survivable. Still, in the darkness, hard to read as catastrophic, and people began to come back down. Not everyone, but enough. Some came to check on their businesses. Some came to retrieve belongings. Some simply decided, as humans often do, that the worst was over, that the danger had passed, that standing in the cold hills above their town all night long had been an overreaction. The warning center had been clear. The warning was still in effect. The danger had not passed. But warnings by midnight, after 2 underwhelming waves, are easy to rationalize away. Part 3. What came back? Tsunamis are deceptive in ways that ordinary waves are not. A normal ocean wave is surface energy. It rises and falls and moves on. A tsunami is something fundamentally different. It is a displacement of the entire water column, from the surface all the way down to the sea floor. All of that water is moving together, and when a tsunami recedes, it is not simply a wave pulling back, it is the ocean inhaling, drawing enormous volumes of water back out to sea to feed the next surge. Witnesses in Crescent City that night described watching the harbor drain in a way they had never seen before.
City officials say a dock that was damaged by the tsunami earlier this week sustained nearly $1 million worth of damage.
Boat hulls that should have been floating in 6 feet of water were suddenly sitting on exposed mud. The sound was described as a roar, a rushing, sucking sound that didn't match anything they had experienced in a lifetime on the water. Some people knew what it meant. A few ran. Most did not run fast enough. Crescent City Harbor, 1:45 a.m., March 28th. The fourth wave hit at approximately 1:45 in the morning. In the hours since the first small surge, the ocean had been organizing. Each receding wave was feeding the next. The fourth wave reached an estimated 20 feet in height as it entered the bay, and the shape of that bay, the same bowl that had sheltered the harbor from ordinary storms for a century, now focused and concentrated every foot of that wave's energy directly onto the waterfront. It arrived in darkness. It moved faster than a person could run. It carried with it everything the previous waves had loosened: timber, automobiles, propane tanks, the wreckage of waterfront buildings that had already been damaged. The debris turned the wave into a battering ram. 12 city blocks were destroyed. The Texaco fuel depot on the waterfront ruptured. Burning fuel mixed with floodwater and spread through streets that were already submerged, setting fire to buildings that the wave itself hadn't knocked down. A man named Gary Clausen and a friend attempted to escape in a vehicle as the wave struck. The water swept their car off the road and out through the shattered waterfront. Clausen was thrown into the open ocean in the darkness. He clung to floating debris through the night, in water cold enough to kill an unprotected person within an hour. By some combination of willpower and fortune, he survived until rescue. His friend did not. 11 people died in Crescent City that night. The majority of them had evacuated and returned. The total property damage in Crescent City exceeded $7 million, equivalent to roughly $65 million today. An entire section of the city had to be rebuilt from the ground up. For a town of fewer than 10,000 people, it was a wound that took decades to fully close. Part 4. Why nobody remembers the reason. Crescent City's disaster became a footnote is straightforward and not particularly surprising.
They were still trying to recover here from a 2006 tsunami that did some $20 million worth of damage.
In Alaska, an earthquake of almost incomprehensible magnitude had just redrawn the physical landscape of the state. The ground around Anchorage had risen and fallen by dozens of feet. Entire neighborhoods had liquefied and slid into the sea. The port city of Valdez was devastated. The village of Chenega lost a third of its population in minutes. The total death toll in Alaska exceeded 115 people, and the property destruction ran into hundreds of millions of dollars. Against that backdrop, 11 deaths in a California fishing town rated a paragraph. But scientists and emergency planners paid close attention to Crescent City, specifically because of what it revealed about human behavior under threat. The term that emerged from their analysis was tsunami complacency. The pattern was simple, and it turned out disturbingly predictable. When the first wave of a tsunami arrives and is smaller than expected, a significant percentage of evacuated people interpret that as confirmation that the threat was exaggerated. They return to their homes and businesses, and if subsequent waves, which can arrive 30 minutes to an hour apart, are larger, those people are caught. It had happened before Crescent City. It would happen again after it. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami killed beachgoers who walked out onto the exposed seafloor when the water retreated before the main surge, curious about the stranded fish and exposed coral. The 2011 Tohoku tsunami in Japan killed people who had evacuated to what were designated safe zones, only to find those zones were not high enough. The warning system does not fail when people don't receive the warning. It fails when people receive the warning, act on it, and then decide, rationally, based on incomplete information, that the threat has passed. That is a problem no siren can solve, and it is a problem that tsunami researchers are still working on today. Part 5. The City That Rebuilt. The Crescent City that exists today is a different city from the one that existed on the morning of March 27, 1964. The low-lying waterfront blocks that were destroyed were not fully rebuilt in the same way.
The USGS says the earthquake lasted about 4 minutes and is the most powerful recorded.
A buffer zone was established between the commercial harbor and the residential areas. The streets are different. The buildings are different. There are signs posted throughout the city showing evacuation routes, green arrows pointing toward the hills, clearly labeled with the word Tsunami. There is a small museum near the harbor. It tells the story of 1964 with photographs, artifacts, and recorded interviews from survivors. School children from the area visit it. Longtime residents can sometimes be found there, talking to visitors about what they remember. The Pacific Tsunami Warning System was dramatically expanded and upgraded in the years following 1964. New seismic monitoring stations were installed across the Pacific. Deep ocean pressure sensors were added to detect tsunamis in open water. Communication protocols were improved. Research into how different coastal geographies amplify or diminish wave energy, research that the 1964 Crescent City event directly inspired, led to better hazard mapping for coastal communities across the Pacific. But the central lesson of Crescent City is not technological. It does not require a more sophisticated sensor network or a louder siren. The lesson is behavioral. It concerns the human mind's stubborn need to declare an emergency over before it actually is, to return to normalcy, to trust what we can see over what we have been told. The ocean has no interest in our need for normalcy. It operates on its own timeline, and the fourth wave does not announce itself. Today, if you visit Crescent City and ask locals about the tsunami, most of them will tell you about 1964. Some will tell you about 2011, when the Tohoku earthquake sent a wave to the California coast that damaged the harbor again, not catastrophically, but enough to close it for months. They know, in Crescent City, that they live in a place that the Pacific has reached before. They know that the bowl of their beautiful bay, the same feature that makes their harbor calm and their fishing grounds sheltered, is also the feature that makes them more vulnerable than almost any other community on the California coast. They stay anyway. They love the place. They know the rules. And when the sirens go off, as they did in 2011, as they have several times since 1964, they go to the hills and they wait. And they keep waiting, no matter how small the first wave is, because they are the community that learned, the hardest possible way, what the fourth wave can do. Some lessons only need to be taught once. The cost of learning them a second time is too high. 11 lives lost. March 28, 1964. Crescent City, California. Never forgotten.